Hello again, I'm Dezz Asante. Welcome back to episode 75 of the TechMuze podcast. We've covered all kinds of things over the last few weeks, and now I get an opportunity to have a good friend on the show again with me today. We got Jeff Dalziel on the show today. Jeff, how you doing, brother?
Good, thank you. Please, how's it going?
I'm doing very well, thank you. It's a beautiful summer day here, and I've been enjoying it. Now that the AC in my house is fixed, it's even more enjoyable to be able to come in and out of the beautiful day. But incidentally, Jeff, for those listening, is a producer, musician, songwriter, owner at Dalziel Music. Give us a little 2-second sort of 25-cent tour of who you are and what you do these days, Jeff.
Well, I'm actually a songwriter, producer. I'm still with Sony ATV as a writer worldwide. I produce pretty much for every major label here in Canada, some stuff in the US. So I kind of wear both hats often, sometimes just songwriting, sometimes producing, and sometimes both. Let's see, I've been doing it forever. I was a producer at Sony Music for about 8 years in-house. When they merged, now I'm independent now, but I still work with quite a few contacts from back then even. And it's just constant music, 2 or 3 sessions a day, and just go.
Sounds like the life, I imagine, to a lot of people listening to this show.
Yeah, it's still work, but it's great. It's I tell people, I get to do my day job and my hobby are the same things.
Right.
People go, how do you work 16 hours a day? Well, my day job is music, and then my hobby at night is music. So it's like
there you go.
Knock on wood that the work keeps coming. And
that's just it. Well, we were just chatting before we hit record there about that very subject, the pros and cons of being self-employed. And it's funny. I was just chatting the other night with somebody about the subject of the ability to find something that you love to do and figure out a way to get people to pay you to do it. And that seems like.
Oh wait, hold on. I'm supposed to get paid for that? I'm kidding.
Well, hopefully they at least give you some beer or something.
Yeah, I got smoke, some beer.
Yeah, exactly.
And exposure. I got lots of exposure.
Oh yeah, lots of exposure. I tried to give my landlord exposure for the month's rent, and it just didn't fly. So I don't know.
Yeah, tell them if I get any more exposure, I'll have frostbite.
Yeah, exactly. So
I hope that answers your question, sort of.
No, it absolutely does. Let's take it back a little bit further. Like, how did you start getting into production? Like, were you dabbling? From the musician standpoint, if you're anything like me, I'm a bit of a tech nerd myself. So as soon as I discovered that I could incorporate technology with my love for music, that's sort of how I sort of stumbled into recording.
In terms of producing, I kind of accidentally fell into it.
Okay.
To be quite honest, I wasn't really a life goal that I really considered I was actually able to do. Maybe a bit of both. I didn't think I was a drummer in a band and so on. But there's a lot of history to explain. But technology was kind of my entry into the industry, but it wasn't. And we were just talking earlier about working at a local music store. You got to remember I was. Let me just show you something. Just don't go away.
All right.
Bring something up. This is pretty funny. I just pulled this out the other day to show somebody how long I've been producing music. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the first laptop pretty much ever made.
Yeah, I can see that.
I'm going to open this up for you, and it looks like something like we're going to launch a satellite in a 1970s movie.
Looking for the big red nuclear arms button,
So, back in the day, I literally was one of about 3 people in Canada dealing with computer and music stuff. And so I would try, that was, my ultimate goal was getting that laptop. But, it's sort of the laptop version of the 1040 ST, which a lot of you people wouldn't be familiar with.
That's the Atari, yeah.
The Atari, and this is all pre-Macintosh. So the people that built that laptop are, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, and Bill Wozniak. So it's literally like I could still turn this on and it will work. So, I would travel with, eventually this one, but before that, I think I went to about 1040 SDs. I had one chrome plated, funny enough. It was a joke, but it was awesome. And I would travel with, 5 fridge size racks full of samplers.
Right.
Going through. So I grew up in a household of technology. Like I had a, for anybody that would know the names, I had I'm giving you a quick rundown of how I got into it. I have to explain this part. I had a Fairlight in my living room when I was a kid. My father actually is a professional piano player, well known around the world, and he was asked to. They asked him to come to Australia to pick the actual keyboard for the Fairlight CMI, and we ended up having one in our living room. So I was like in our living room. So I was like 13 or something, and I was already programming on a Fairlight. This is something that Peter Gabriel made famous from his first big electronic record.
Right. Yeah.
And so I just sort of then that we had that, but we also had my dad also had Alpha Centauri system, which is like this IBM with ribbon cables coming out. It looked like something out of Weird Science,
Yeah.
Like I've been, and it just sort of kind of, because I was a drummer and a piano player young, it just all kind of made sense in some weird way. And so by the time, people like regular folks had a chance to, buy equipment like that. I mean, things were very, very expensive at the time. I can't even remember what a Fairlight went for at that time. And of course we didn't own it. It went back, but we had it for quite a while to kind of screw around with. So by the time it became, I guess, commercially available to people, I would already have the jump on everybody.
Right.
So, funny enough, actually, he's now the head of A&R at Universal. We used to work together, and we were just somehow he caught on to it very quickly, and we became sort of like MIDI consultant systems designers.
Okay.
And so for me, what happened was I ended up, helping put together rigs for some, back in the time. I'm trying to think of when that would be, but it was quite a while ago that, people would call, "Do you have MIDI stuff?" It was pretty funny. Like they didn't quite understand what it meant, but
yeah.
But at the time there was the musicians in Toronto that kind of became successful, but they didn't break out huge, and they kind of got more into making music for film and television. But there was that disconnect in terms of equipment, and all this stuff came new, and they're like, "Oh, what is this?" And so I remember one of my first getting into production or the kind of that world was, setting up, designing systems for these guys and going out and having it shipped to their studio in Toronto. And I would show up and help them set it up and run it through. They'd be like, "Well, just lock up, just give me a chase scene or something, a car." And then I would start putting the drums and they would just like this is something that for me and Sean at the time was just sort of second nature.
Yeah.
Because we've been doing it every day, and I've been doing this before it was even commercially available, and they were just kind of like, "Could you just come and do that for us?" Like and so that's that was kind of how I got into professional music, other than being in a band. So that's a whole other side stream. But anyways, it got to. I think by the time I was 20, I had done like 200 plus TV shows and movies. It was just like there was so much work because it was so new and nobody kind of knew what I did.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I was a musician, so I had the whole background of drumming and piano playing. It just kind of it was a very natural progression for me. So it's funny trying to tell people how far things have come. Like I remember buying my first 40 gig hard drive or 40 meg hard drive. Removable 40 meg hard drive for my E1, I think E1 or E2 emulator samplers. I had packs of them, and it's like I had to keep changing. It was crazy.
Back in the days when your computer had a pull start on it.
It was so large. It's like I had to hire cartridge companies to pick up my equipment and take it to different studios in Toronto, and it was
Yeah.
quite a business, I'm telling you. But
So what are your general thoughts then on the progression of technology and what it's allowed us to be able to do, and not only just for you in the work that you do, but also in the industry in general? There's such a proliferation now of all kinds of music, some good, some not so good, because everyone with a laptop and a couple of bucks can have a basic home studio.
well, there's a like a multi-tiered answer to that too.
Okay.
I'll stop and say that the technology is what got me in the door, but it was my musical abilities that kept me in the game.
Makes sense.
And I have lots of stories about the transition or the progression of technology and so on and so forth. Let me see if I can organize this so it doesn't get really confusing. Being part of computer aided music, I guess. I guess maybe I got an early lesson in just throughout, because it was so early for me, or early in that technology, that I learned that the parts and the music and the answer to the question of how this music should be is never found in the computer or software or plugins and so on and so forth. It still has to come from somewhere else. And I noticed during, I'll tell you a funny story to kind of answer this question.
Okay.
I'll leave the band out of it, but I was doing a gig at Sony, and it was a remix. Or actually, was it a remix? We were actually producing. So I can't remember exactly what it was we were doing, but I didn't laugh until a couple years later, because I'm sure you're familiar with Zoolander.
Yeah.
Where they're like going, they're hitting it. The files are in the computer. Like, remember that scene?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that happened to me at Sony with this band. They're all kind of standing around my computer and me going, so the strings are in the computer? And I had to laugh later on when that happened.
Yeah.
I've been through that. So, but they all got bitten by the bug, and I helped them put their systems together. And I really did, and I'm not, talking behind people's back here. I had conversations later with these one in particular, that his music, once he was established with the equipment, had all the at the necessary tools, or the most expensive ones at the time, because it was Sony, and I found that his music and writing started to suffer. And so he'd come and play me stuff, and I'd be like, it's great, it sounds great, but this song is it's not great, And I said, why don't you just put that computer away and get back to playing and writing? And something sparked, when he was like, you know what, you're right. And the next couple of things he did after that they were great hits.
Right.
So, and then he's gone on to make some great, huge music that if I could tell you who it is, you would know.
Right.
But I'm not going to sell anybody out. So
Fair enough.
he's done well, and luckily for him, out of the few that had that misfortune of losing themselves as artists and writers in technology, he kind of punched through, and it did really well for him. And I can tell now when I hear his productions, the production is the last thing he's thinking about, and the equipment's the last thing he's thinking about. And so, my advice to anybody I think anybody's capable of jumping from, I've got new laptop with software, and they can jump to, and have great success, provided they have some skills in songwriting and arrangement.
And taste. Yeah.
And taste. So, again, the only way I can sum it up is the answer to your problem of the song, the blank page in front of you, is not going to be found using any DAW, or any plugin, or any software.
Yeah.
In fact, I've done a lot of co-writes and songwriting camps, and I've actually argued with people, that can you turn on the computer and can we get a beat going? I'm like, no, that's, let's write a song.
Right. Start there. Yeah.
We'll start there. And, I have so many stories about that. They're pretty funny. And Again, it's always, in those songwriting camps, I've had arguments with people about it, but I can say that I have 100% placement rate in songs at those kind of things because we took the time, we spent the 5 hours writing a song,
right,
than trying to produce a song at the same time you're writing it. If you get into producing and writing at the same time, you might as well just shut it off. That's how I feel.
Yeah. You got to start with the good quality seed, I suppose, right? And I guess we get into, especially with the technologies that we have these days, we get into this too many options syndrome, and that can really. I know I've gone through that where it's really distracted me, especially when you get a suite of new plugins or something, and then for the next couple of sessions, I'm just messing with plugins and I'm not actually thinking too much about the music. And so that is definitely something to be aware of. In fact, I was talking about this with my partner, Carol, also known as my lovely lady. We write together and record, and she wrote a tune, just acoustic guitar, and she's not really much of a guitar player. She plays primarily ukulele, but she wrote a tune on the guitar, great song. And that's all it was, guitar and vocals. And we brought it into the studio and we worked with a few producers. I don't know. Are you familiar with the Rad Collective?
No.
Okay, so it's a bunch of guys that work out of Chalet Studios, myself included.
Okay. Well, I know Chalet, and so I think also posted. So.
Dave Chester and Dale Russell and Aubrey Dale and Rob Laidlaw and myself. And so we brought it up there, and we laid down the acoustic and a scratch vocal, and then we just let them sort of run with it. And they all have production shops and lots of experience. And man, what we ended up with is amazing for starters, but is such a interesting direction that the tune took by getting the different opinions of the different players who not only are great players but also, like I said, have some production chops as well, and are able to explore ideas and pull ideas out of the people they're working with and so forth. And so that was a lot of fun, and that was one of our first experiences working that way, taking a seedling of a song that was decent, that had promise, and then letting other people's third-party opinions influence the shape and direction. And I imagine you spent a lot of your time doing that type of work?
Yeah, I mean, the way I approach production now is, like I said, we don't even start here. We start with songs.
Right.
And I can honestly say that when the song is written, it's already produced in my head. And I've had several artists that, we do that. We lay down after we've written the song, I lay a click, and we just put a rough vocal down across some chords. Mm-hmm. And several artists have gone and come back, and they're like, "Oh my God, how did you?" They didn't hear the song when they left. They couldn't really. They thought, "I don't know if that song's going to be," because they're not hearing it like they're expecting things to be done.
Right.
And then then that gives me the time to take my songwriter hat off, and then get into production and go, this is what I'm hearing. And this goes back to what I said a minute ago about not looking for the answers in the computer. I'm more or less 80%. I can not visualize it, hear it. Mm-hmm. And then I'm just using whatever DAW. I can work on any system because I'm not looking for the system to help me do it. The system is just a tool to get out what I'm already hearing.
Right.
So it's not about, I don't know, that might sound flaky, but it's the truth. It's like I just use it as an instrument. It's not really I'm not looking for it to give me a new sound or whatever. Right. In fact, that's another thing is I really I can give advice to people, and often will. One of the things is early on in technology, like there's the Corgam 1 and all these other, and everybody was using the stock sounds, and that can really, it's actually funny because it's been brought back because it's all DJ Mustard. It's just all like old school M1 and sounds that Ensoniq sounds that were stock patches. It's like, oh, and that's why you see the Corgam 1 now as an app you can get.
Yeah, I've seen that.
People figured it out. But, what I've done as a producer is I mainly use now Contact. But even when I was using samplers, I sound designed. And so that's a good way to kind of give yourself a signature sound. So people
Right.
always ask like, "Oh, hey, what keyboard was that?" Whether it's on a country song or a pop song that I'm working on, they go, "Oh my God, what keyboard is that?" And like, I think I just did a song where I used. Did you see the thing about NASA where they released the sound of planets?
No, I didn't. I missed that.
They took like the radio waves of like the radiation waves of a planet and calculated down into our hearing what they were.
Okay.
It's pretty cool. And you could go to NASA and download it. Well, I did that. I downloaded them, and then I threw samples into Contact and stacked it and made complex waveforms that were usable as chords and created sounds that nobody else has.
Interesting.
That's how I think, younger producers or newer producers might start thinking, like, rather than just using the tools that are there, use the tools to create your own voices.
Right.
Not just keyboards, but also guitar sounds. Or it's nice to throw up a patch and go, yeah, that's great. It sounds amazing. But, I don't think I've used a stock patch for anything. And that includes plugins. It's like, I do use the, is it Chris or Tom Lordell? Chris?
From Waves, the CLA. Yeah, I love those.
The CLA, I love it. But I go through the patches and I'm like, it's like I don't think I've ever used a patch. It's
right.
Like, I turn the thing on and I start moving faders until I like it, and and that just sort of becomes. So it's not just keyboards, but it's guitar settings, plugin settings, and so on. Like, don't be afraid to go and play around, because really there is no wrong. It's just sort of. I think that would be. I would like to see more of that, because I do know. It's funny that I've heard those stock patches. I just have to hear them once or twice and go. I hear it on the radio and go, yeah, that's patch whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's nothing more. There's nothing more that'll take you out of the game quick if you are not somewhat original.
Right. And one of the takeaways I think that should be emphasized from what you're telling us here is it's really important to start from what's inside and use the tools to bring it out, as opposed to trying to get the music out of the tools, kind of thing. Would you agree with that?
I hate to be that guy that tries to tell everybody how it is, but it's like I literally can hear the radio now, and I honestly say sometimes, I'm like, yeah, it sounds pretty good, but if you'd spent more time on the song than you did the kick drum, you might have a hit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's wise advice.
Yeah. So, and that's the other thing too. A lot of people spend way too much time on the production when they should, if they spent half the time just picking on the song. Like, pick on the song. That's really all people are going to care about. And of course, the vocal performance and stuff. That's
sure.
There's lots of tricks for that, but for the most part, I think we do have our airwaves, and definitely the internet is definitely cluttered by a lot of things that could be good but aren't good. I've said often, and I'm paraphrasing because I can't remember how I say it all the time, but there's some incredible technology that makes our jobs a lot quicker and easier.
Sure.
Which is fortunate. Unfortunately, there's a lot of technology that makes our jobs quicker and easier, and artists that could be something down the road might be suffering because, people are using those singers or songwriters as practice for production. And
right.
I think that, where some artists are suffering because of that. I'm all for it. I'm neither pro label or anti DIY. I'm neither. I'm kind of both. I love the whole concept of somebody be able to switch on and create something. I think that's nice.
Yeah.
And it's like sometimes those are the best productions too, because it's like it's coming from an ignorance or an innocence thing, and I think music needs a lot of that. But to open up a shop and go, I'm a producer now, and I'm gonna produce this singer. I think you need to stop and take a little extra time and focus on some core tools that I think a lot of producers are missing.
Right.
I'm not saying I'm the cat's ass when it comes to producing. I'm just a producer.
Fair enough. Yeah.
And I've got some success, but I'm only as good as the artists I work with. I believe that. But what I bring to the table isn't plugins and computing and so on. I go and I work in rehearsal spaces, and I can talk drums and I can talk guitars. I could pretty much play anybody's instrument as good or better than them.
Right.
And it's about coaching and pulling people together. And I'll tell you, just to before we go on, my advice to a lot of these people that are now producing, that they should probably try to hang out with some bands and learn. If you're not a drummer, learn how to play drums a bit, learn how to play guitar a bit. Because I'll tell you now, my business goes up and down. I keep working, but sometimes it's more electronic, sometimes it's more this. It's definitely coming back to a little more band-related stuff. Okay. And so to answer your earlier question, is like, what is a producer to me? Well, a producer is somebody that accrues talent and sound and puts it all together and produces a product. But we are hired or not hired based on our skills. And so if you can't speak band, you could be limiting your options and you could be limiting your future as a producer. So there's lots of hats I have to wear, but the fact that I can go into rehearsal space, I can come into your band and go, no, it does. Play it more like this. And you go, oh my God, the guy can play piano. Yeah. Even if it's okay, like, you don't have to be a virtuoso, but to be able to speak the language of people, you need to have, when you start to do it, like, it's different than having a guy or girl come in and sing and the producer's rapping music around it. It's a totally different thing when you have to deal with 4 or 5 personalities. And there's a bit of psychology that goes with that, but above anything, talent or whatever, you have to have the trust of the people that are working with you.
Yeah, I imagine there is a lot of there is a fairly large psychology / sociology type of component to being a producer. A lot of people, I think, forget about that because you're dealing with artists and musicians, and you're trying to not just create a piece of recorded music, but you're also trying to pull out from the artists the best that they have to offer. I imagine is something that you probably find yourself dealing with, right?
Absolutely. And so, how a newer producer might want to approach things is, learn as many instruments as they possibly can. Learn some guitar. If you don't play guitar, pick it up and play it. If you don't play piano, pick up piano. Drums, whatever. Get away from the computer for a while and live some music. And then 2 things are going to happen. Number one, you're going to be able to bring better ideas to your solo artists that you might be producing and wrapping all the music around. But you're also opening up doors for future gigs, which are coming more and more now. Even for me, it's back into the studio, live musicians, and being able to live and not be, terrified of that. And I've just seen people that could be they got some great ideas, but they've never communicated with musicians, and they can't talk guitar. They can't. It's not about theory. It's got nothing to do with that, because my theory is absolute shite.
Okay.
And I mean, I do know theory, but I'm not like one of those guys that are constantly analyzing things, The extent that I use in my production is that major or minor? That's all I need to know. Yeah. And I know how that all works. But, I mean, I don't really bring that into, I do it more just from what I'm used to doing. But I can still speak. I can play guitar. I can play bass. I can play drums. I can play keyboards. I can play trumpet. I can play sax. I can play banjo. Wow. And the list goes on. Am I a virtuoso in any of those instruments? No. Drums? Yes. But
that's your main thing then.
The piano for sure.
Right.
So, but I can play guitar, and I've played guitar on lots of stuff that's out and charting, and I know my limits as a producer. So if I'm creating, if I'm working with a solo singer or artist, and I'm adding things, I also another piece of advice is don't be a greedy pants.
Okay.
If you have a budget and you can afford it, and it takes a little money away from you, hire some good players that you owe it to your artists. Which is also another thing I'm hearing on the radio. I'm like, what if they just hired a better guitar player, or like if they hired a better drummer,
right?
And there's something to that. It's a bit of the lost art. It's funny that it makes me feel almost antiquated to the fact that I consider I'm trying to explain this. Maybe I'm explaining this wrong. Okay, so I'll say there's a particular country artist. I've had several that have had the same said to me, but during radio interviews across Canada, they're like, well, so this is obviously produced in Nashville. Who produced it? And they're like, well, actually it was produced in Oshawa by a guy from Toronto who actually is from Nashville. I'm from Nashville. Well,
oh, really?
But it's not because I'm good at it. It's because I used great live musicians. Could I, an example, I just have a single coming out now for another artist that I played the bass part on the song, and it's right. The bass part's right, and it works. And I'm like, I don't know, maybe. So I call my buddy Justin Cutting, who's Brett Kissel's bass player. I go, can you? And he's like, yeah, sure. And he plays pretty much what I was playing, but stuff that I wouldn't think of as a bass player in a country band.
Right.
He added something. I'm like, well, there you go. Yeah. And of course, then I've hired a mandolin player that's what they do, and I've hired a violin player. And so, like I said, a producer is about accruing talent and sound, however you get that, to create a product, to produce a product that people want to buy or not.
Right.
Or buy into.
Yeah.
And so you owe it to your artists and yourself as a producer to always have the best possible thing happening in that department at all times. And if you can't bring that, then, and you try to do it, and you're going to go just that, you could be doing a disservice to yourself and to your artist and to our art, or to our music industry.
That makes sense.
It is a bit of a greed thing on top of like really crappy budgets sometimes. So people do know that if they're coming to me for here's a solo artist, it has to be real, and we want it to be. Country is the one to use that example because I've done stuff in the box, I hate it, and I don't like it, and usually I'm like, I'll convince myself, oh, you know what, it's not a huge budget, it probably, I end up spending money with people, and I make like $5 at the end of the day, but people hear it and they go, well, that's great, and that brings on more work, and
sure, and
so you have to kind of invest in yourself as a producer.
That makes sense.
And the best way to invest in yourself is to invest in other talented people as part of the crew. I think that's it. So
that makes sense to me. Yeah, that's one of the things I love about having the opportunity to work with the Rad Collective is not only are they a group of producers, but they're all super talented. I don't know if you know all the guys, but Dale played with the Guess Who for 17 years, and
I know Rob Laidlaw too.
Rob, Platinum Blonde, and so on and so forth. And so these guys have all got years and years of experience, and we happen to have guitar, bass, drums, and keys in the room. So it's a real pleasurable experience to have.
It elevates
everything in the room.
I mean, and this is it. I think one of the biggest things missing in our music today is imperfection. And having live musicians, even if they're fantastic, they're still going to have a good degree of suck to them.
the human element.
When you're comparing it to, whatever drum program you have, or you have all these loop programs and, dedicated drum modules in your Pro Tools or whatever you're using is great, but it's never that good. And when it is that good, it's kind of boring. I always say to people, if it's perfectly in time and perfectly in tune, it's perfectly boring.
Yeah.
There's truth to that. And I hear that in radio a lot. So that could be, I could be giving away a secret that is like maybe 80% of why I still get work. It's just that I try to keep it somewhat true, to things. For example, I have a steel player coming in tonight to play on a song that I could technically fake it, but it's not going to be the same. It's not going to, and a slide guitar thing that I've just played, at least the concept to, if it works in this track now, and I just send out files to a pretty famous guitar player to play some slide licks on it. Not that I can't, pick up my slide right here and fake it to the point where I would fool maybe 50% of the world, but there's a subtle thing that I think even non-musicians pick up on. And so again, I try to, if the budget allows, I do as much as I can outside of my world. I get people that I trust to play, and I think that's even if you're, if you're a remixer, let's say, and you're remixing stuff, well, go do something like when I talked about making your own libraries. Do something really obscure. Hire a live guitar player to come in and make squeaks and squawks and and loop that stuff and
Right.
go, and people go, what is that? Or pick it gets like a dobro thing, and why did Beck use a dobro on his what was the big song? You know what I'm talking about? Loser.
Loser, yeah.
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 Well,
Had a fresh sound.
It's fresh. And I mean,
Yeah.
that's the only, and of course, Coleman House throwing banjo on a pop track. And there's a lesson in that. And I think a lot of producers out there want to be producers or, hope, what is the word? Not want to be, aspiring producer.
Yeah.
Is to kind of get out of that box, get out of this box in front of us, because we're all sharing the same plugins and the tools and the same sound modules and the whatever. Get away from that for a little bit.
Yeah.
Get Contact or get something that you can record your own stuff into as samples. It's very easy these days, and get some friends in, hire some people, make some noise, and contribute to the world of music rather than keep using what's there, because it's not very refreshing, that's for sure. And that's why my productions sound, not saying they sound better, but they sound different.
Right.
And, I currently have a hit at country now with another artist named Dan Davidson.
Okay.
And I want to make a song that kind of reminds me of, he'd written the song, we talked about it. The production approach was somewhere between John Denver and Coleman Hell, actually. It's like, or not Coleman Hell, Andy Grammer.
Okay.
So the new pop versus the old country. And so I've got the electronic part of it, but I've got Brett Kissel's fiddle player playing on it, and there's mandolins and acoustic guitars, but then there's a synth bass playing, almost like a dance, not warble, but, using sidechain compression, in between the beats to give it this modern feel, but it still sounds like it was recorded in 1970.
Right.
And it's like, and it's funny because you'll get some pushback when you try to be really inventive, because we live in Canada, unless you're in the U.S. But I had a lot of pushback on that song because they're like, I don't know, it sounds kind of old school, and it's like currently at number 16.
So this is released and it's doing well.
Going. So
what's the name of the tune? Maybe we can look it up.
It's called Found.
Found. Okay. Yeah, I'll have to check that out.
It's pretty fun. It's a fun track, and it was about trying to make a combination of things that I love as a producer and the artist I know he loves, and again it was like, let's take some chances. We'll do a tele guitar, like a cool little train pattern, but let's do a stutter like it's on a Rihanna record or something, and bring it into like using technology and tricks of what's pop now into a production that necessarily wouldn't be using that all the time. And that's, it could have failed, but it's the fact that we took the chance, and everybody go, well, how did that happen? Like, what is that? And of course, now I know I'm going to get several phone calls. We'd like that, and get that, but at least it got the work to me, and it's, again, it's not that I never think I'm a great producer. I'm only as good as the people I work with, but my skills that I'm bringing to the table might be a little more superior than others, and that's only not because I think I'm smarter or better. It's just that I have years of playing drums in a country band, a jazz band, a rock band, and so on and so forth. I lived every genre of music. So, and that would be another lesson or another piece of advice, is get out of your genre.
Yes, diversify.
At least once a day. So I tell everybody, a lot of the bands I work with, I put them on a strict regimen of that. In the morning, you get up and you have your coffee, go look at the Billboard charts for pop, the top 30, and then the country charts, and then the alternative rock, and then the CHR, and then the dance. So you're looking at 100 and some odd songs having your coffee, but you can just sample and dabble. I know that song, I don't need to hear it, but let me go, this one's coming up in charts, let me hear that one. And so the charts are a reflection of what people are liking.
Right.
And so sometimes, like I said, the track for country, it's got some inspiration from some pop stuff. And if you're a pop producer, maybe you should go listen to some stuff in country, because Coleman Hell just used a banjo. And how big was that song? So
huge.
You can get a lot of lessons from outside genres. And I think we live in a time where, I have a 20-year-old daughter that she likes pop, she likes rock, she likes hip-hop, she likes country, some stuff, as long as it's a good song. And she can appreciate it. It's not like when we were younger where I'm a rocker. And
Right.
I think technology sometimes kind of puts us in our little rooms and this is the genre of music we do.
Yeah.
If you're making pop songs, take a minute and go listen to what's happening in alt rock. Go listen to what's happening in country. You may or not use it or not, but the regimen I make, the bands that I work with do, and solo artists, is to go, okay, let's say it's a rock band. I know you hate Katy Perry. It's not the point. Go listen to it and find me something in there you like.
Right.
Is it a sound, or a keyboard sound, or a drum, or maybe it's just a kick drum, or maybe it's a guitar sound. Find me something in the song, even though you hate the song. Find me something you like. And then, because that allows me as a producer to have, I think of it like a palette of colors of paint where I can pull from things. And, so if it's your record I'm producing, you're not going to come in here and go, oh my God, what is that? You're using a ukulele? Well, yeah, you like the ukulele. You're never going to say that. You're going to go, yeah, that's cool. Does it work? Well, then we can decide.
Yeah.
At least if you can create a better color palette for yourself as a producer, it's just like having more voices. It's like speaking different languages. And you can really make a big impact on the music scene if you're not just doing the same as the people that you're fighting with to get chart position or jobs. If you're all doing the same thing, then it goes to the lowest price.
Exactly. Yeah.
If you are doing similar things to everybody, but you're adding something that's unique or you think differently, you have a better chance of breaking out of that mold. And and also, chase change over the years. And so, I've always liked every kind of music more or less, but I was into rock for a long time, but because I was so open to things, that it allowed me to just change streams a little bit and I kind of appreciate all the art now.
Yeah.
And being able to pull from that has really certainly benefited me as a producer.
Absolutely. I can imagine. It's very interesting. I remember growing up back in high school days, there was a friend of mine who I looked up to as a guitarist. He did all kinds of inventive, creative stuff. And then at one point, just towards the end of high school, he spent a year writing really simple country / folky type music, 3 chords and the truth kind of style. And he explained, he's like, I just had a realization that I've got to get back to the song, and it's kind of like some of the things you've been advising us here today. It's get down to that seed of a song. Is the song good? From there, once the song is good, how do you hear it and use the tools that you have at your disposal to pull those sounds out into the world so other people can hear it as well, And I think that's a really good perspective. And being able to diversify is also something that I find really interesting. I used to be very much music for musicians. That was what got me going. I like to see,
absolutely,
someone do things, stupid human tricks, right? Someone do things that seem impossible on their instrument, right? And then I started getting into much more simple music, and a lot of it was my buddy Pete's attitude that I was just describing earlier, and that's really helped me in the work that I do with, as a songwriter and working with other artists and so forth as well, to be able to pull ideas from different pools and different sources and make little fusions of things that turn into something that maybe people have never heard before, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Very interesting. So I want to be respectful of your time, Jeff. I just got a couple other questions for you. Are you still producing your own music?
Well, when I co-write, often I will produce up. It's kind of my music, sure, but I don't. I haven't been in a band for years, and it's a long time ago.
Okay, so you're not selling albums or anything like that.
No, I mean, if anything, I kind of keep. I make stuff and put it away just for, potential sync at film and television or soundtrack stuff, which I do place now and again.
Right.
But I don't really, I'm just busy making records with bands and artists that I don't really, when I finally get time to just do it, I'm like, I think I just want to binge watch.
Yeah.
Game of Thrones or but I do, it's funny that I'm watching a TV series and I'm like, I want to write something like that. I want to get in there and do.
Yeah.
That's inspiring. So, I do make my own music, but most people don't really hear it. It becomes wallpaper in a movie, or it ends up porting into like a song later for somebody. But
Fair enough.
Yeah, I don't really do have an independent artist kind of thing going on for me. I don't think I really want that.
It's not your aspiration.
No, I mean, if I'm going to do anything, I'll do like I might in the next year do something Peter Gabriel-y, Woodkid A, like just totally
okay,
like obscure and self-indulgent, just whatever, and that's kind of nice too, because then I can kind of get out some demons, and but I do that, but it's never really for any kind of release. So.
Right. Well, if it happens, let me know, because I'd love to hear it.
I don't know if you'd want to hear it. You'd be like,
inside the crazy mind. Yeah, I get it.
It was just jazz a minute ago. Now it's country. What happened?
Yeah, I was in a band once called Adjacent with a good friend of mine, and he, the music was what I would label as somewhat schizophrenic. You know, it sounded like fragments of 15 different songs all sewn together like a quilt. You know.
Nice.
It was fun, but it wasn't for everybody. I can tell you that much for sure.
Well, yeah, I was in some obscure things growing up too. So,
yeah.
But it's good to dabble in whatever you can. I think that's a good thing, and that's what I think. Again, to reiterate, get out there and make friends with other musicians and that aren't necessarily following your genre of music that you're specifically entrenched in at the moment. You might be redefining a genre if you do that. So,
right.
Sorry, go on.
It's great advice. Another thing that my lovely lady Carol always says is, if you want to get out of a creative rut and songwriter's block or whatever, pick up an instrument you don't actually play and start making sounds on that.
Absolutely.
And that may inspire your thoughts to go in a creative direction that they never would have gone in. I'm a guitar player primarily, and so many times I pick up my guitar and my fingers just do the things that they always do, and I sometimes get stuck in a rut. And so I'll jump on the piano,
Absolutely.
which I don't play very well, and some new ideas will start to flow from there.
That works, definitely. Yep, that and binge watching a TV show.
Binge watching Game of Thrones. That's right.
That inspires music.
Listen, Jeff, I appreciate you taking the time to chat with us and give us a little bit of insight into what you do and your philosophies on things. Where's the best place people to go online to find out what you do, or if they want to get a hold of you? Do you hang out on any social media sites at all? I see you on Facebook now and again.
Well, if you just go to DezzelMusicOfficial.com, that's my website.
I'll put a link in the notes for that, by the way.
Yeah, and that has all my Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, which I never use, but I don't even know how to use it. But everything's there, credits and so on and so forth. So
DezzelMusicOfficial.com.
Correct.
Very good. Listen, thanks again, Jeff. I really appreciate it, and I will see if I can send some people over to check out what you're doing, and I suppose we'll wrap it up with that.
Sure. Do you want to talk about my old computer? I'm kidding. Anytime. If there's anything else you want to ask, that's great. I don't have too much time left, but if there's anything else you need to know, or
no, I think we're good. I know you got a session coming up in a few minutes there, so I'll let you get prepped for that, and
cool.
And we'll take it from there.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, and I'll chat with you online.
Yeah, good luck. We'll talk soon.
All right. Thanks, man.
Peace.